Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maddie if you're new here. I hope your day is going well. And today we are going to be doing my September wrap up. I read like 13, 14, 15, something around those lines. This is still September when I'm filming this. Obviously, all the books that I read after this will be going in the next wrap up. And I obviously read a few books in this wrap up that were in August, but we're just saying it's September. You guys know how this works. Moving on. All right, so I want to just dive into these books because I have like actual reviews for you guys for this wrap up, so I really want to get into it. Starting with my adult fantasy that I read during this month. I actually read 6, which has been kind of good. Hopefully I'll read a couple more today because I have to finish the Night Circus. But we're gonna start off with the Dragon Republic by R.F. Kong. This is one of my all-time favorite series, guys. This was the second book in the Poppy War series. I gave it 5 stars. The one thing about the Poppy War is that it is brutal, violent, and very, very heavy on the trigger warnings. And I do think that the Dragon Republic follows this in a very good way, but it also keeps its humor and it keeps its pacing, and I really, really appreciated that. And also one of my tweets got like retweeted by the author, so heck yeah. Read this series if you're into basically fantasy series inspired by real world events, and specifically with this one, the Rape of Nanking. So if you are in any way worried about the trigger warnings, please, please, please look them up before going into this series. And then we have Jade War by Fonda Lee. This is actually the sequel to Jade City. I'm not going to be going into the sequels all that much, but with this one I would say I gave it 4 to 5 stars. This is like a series that's based up like kind of like The Godfather plus ninjas. It has a very interesting world. I do think with this one though that there was much less humor and much less pacing put into this book. This particular sequel actually spans several years, whereas the first book in the series moved at a much faster clip, and I think that that is why this book took me so fucking long to read, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. I'm very excited to see how this series wraps up. And then we have Dark Dawn by Jay Kristoff. I do have a spoiler-free reading vlog of this book. This is obviously the last book in the Nevernight series. I gave it 5 stars. I'm still thinking about doing a book talk for you guys because I have an interesting relationship with this book, to say the least, and I would love to say if you guys would want a full video on it, because I'll do it for you, but only if you guys ask for it. That's how things work now. And then getting into the more in-depth reviews, we've got The Girl Who Can Move Shit With Her Mind by Jackson Ford. This is, what do you know, about a girl who can move shit with her mind. And in this book, she is part of a government team. This character, in my opinion, is not done well. This type of character is something that kind of annoys me, but I feel like a hypocrite because she's foul-mouthed, she's obstinate, and stubborn as fuck. And if that doesn't sound like somebody you guys know, I don't know what else to say. This character is written without sentimentality, and she makes sense because she's supposed to be tough as nails woman that was like tested on by the government, but in the beginning of the book she doesn't really have emotions or attachments towards anyone, and then all of a sudden at the end of the book she has like really strong attachments to people, and it's like I don't feel like the progression of this character development really showed us that. And she is so fucking quippy, like every single thing out of her mouth is just so it's a one-liner, and I just need it to calm down. Like she can talk like a real person every now and then. There's also a really super unnecessary sex conversation in the book, and I'm including it in this review because it reminded me of like Artemis from Andy Ware level awkwardness. And I just know that the author that wrote this, I think is using a pseudonym, and they're apparently like a famous sci-fi fantasy writer. And I just have an inkling that whoever wrote this doesn't usually write female characters, if you catch my drift. And I gave this book 2 stars. Honestly, it could have been a 5-star read for me if the characters had not been done so not great, and if there hadn't been like a kind of borderline problematic ending. And then moving on to This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. This is a very interesting novel, and honestly I read it because C.C. Ewing was saying that it was a Romeo and Juliet female-female love story, and it is that, and I would recommend it based on that. But the prose is very flowery. If you do not like purple prose, don't read this book. Honestly, most of the time while I was reading this very, very short novel, I was just along for the ride. Half the time I didn't know what was happening. I had a very emotional reaction to the end of the book. It is a very beautiful story about these warring factions who are literally like going up and down time on these streams, and it's done fantastically, but half the time I had no fucking clue what was happening. if you enjoy like books like Middle Game by Shannon McGuire, I would recommend it, but otherwise I don't think this is going to be a people pleaser. And then I read Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey. I loved this book. I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars though. This is basically like if you put like Harry Potter plus like Jessica Jones. It was really enjoyable. Book focuses on a sister relationship, and the main character is a private investigator that is investigating a murder at the magic school that the sister actually works at. The main character has no magic, while her sister is a very like powerful magician witch person. And I found this very, very interesting. The one flaw that I found was that the main character was so fucking obnoxious sometimes, and I honestly think that that's something to do with the detective thriller genre. I think that the main character has to be kind of larger than life, so you're not really paying attention to the secondary characters, but I also really enjoyed the romance in this. There's a kind of a subplot for the main character, and she has a romance, and I thought that was really, really enjoyable. I really, really liked that touch. They also played well with the chosen one trope in this book. I thought that was done hilariously. So if you are interested in speculative fiction, I highly recommend this book. It is so much fun. I also read Handbook for Mortals. I should have a review up of this book already, so please go fucking watch that now. I did not like that book. 1 star. And I read only 2 YA books in the month of September. Hopefully I said September at the beginning of this video. And starting off with House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. This is my book of the month pick, and I'm probably not going to be working with them anymore. But this particular novel was very interesting. It was supposed to be a Crimson Peak plus 12 Princesses gothic spooky tale, and honestly about 1/2 to 2/3 of the book is that. And then the rest of it is not. We just delve really deep into like the religious aspects of this book, and there's kind of a violent rape scene towards the end of the book that I just want to let you guys know about. But I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. I didn't like the romance. I didn't like the ending. I was ecstatic for like a spooky manor situation, but this just did not deliver that. The main character had like 12 sisters, and like 4 or 5 of them have died, including her mother. And honestly, the townspeople think they're cursed, and I would honestly agree with them. I would say that would be something I would say, yeah, you guys need to probably fucking move, or all of you are going to die. But yeah, the end of this book does not pay off for what I thought it was going to be. But I digress. It was spooky-ish. I just want to watch Crimson Peak now. And the next YA book that I read in the month of September was Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. The publisher actually sent this to me because I loved her first book, Emergency Contact. I did hear about this book coming out. I wasn't super interested in the synopsis. So this is about Pablo, who works at a bodega and has a fuck ton of credit card and college debt. And he meets at like 5 a.m. this super starlet, what's her name? Leanna Smart. And they have a blossoming relationship. The one thing that I thought was really strong about Emergency Contact and what I enjoyed about it was that the dual point of views between the 2 main characters gave us a really good look into why both of them are flawed from their own perspective. This book only follows Pablo, and I did enjoy his narration for most of the book. I thought he was an interesting character. I just find that I know that when I was in my younger 20s, my mom still read my mail, so I have no fucking clue how he managed to not have his parents know how much debt he was in. But he also got to the point where he was kind of obnoxious, and he would do things that were like, why are you doing that? And people around him would try and help him, and he would just not let them. And there are times in your young adult life where that can happen, but I'm 25 now, and I have been so removed from this genre for so many years now that I think that I just don't connect well to this particular type of story. I did end up giving this 3 out of 5 stars, mostly because the character of Leanna Smart, we didn't get anything from her, and it just felt like the worst representation of insta-love that I've read in a book in a very long time. I also want to say that this book has the use of the word bet, like the slang term bet, used way too many times. You don't want to be over generous with slang terms because they go out of style so fast, and it's so easy to recognize that an adult is writing a YA book rather than a teenager. Like a teenager may say that word often, but you don't want to be over generous with using terms that will be out of date within 6 months of your book hitting the shelf if it isn't already out of date after you've written it. But otherwise, I did enjoy aspects of this book. I think that there was a interesting concept on, you know, not knowing what you want to do at 19 because you shouldn't know what you want to do at 19. And I do think that this book would be better for other readers, but I kind of wish that we had the other point of view from Leanna so that we can kind of see her point of things. I don't know. Right, getting into the smut and the romance that I read in the month of September. The 24-hour smuttathon actually happened before I was able to post my August wrap-up, so some of these books will be basically what I read during that readathon. So let's get into it. So I actually listened to The Right Side by Alicia Ray, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. This is an interesting novel revolving around 2 characters that are actually sort of involved in the dating app industry. And what I thought was interesting about this book is that these 2 have actually hooked up. They met, slept together, and just like went apart. But for some reason, the main character Rhiannon really hates this guy's guts because he ghosted her. And the one thing about ghosting in this book is what I find interesting is that the author seems to have a personal bias towards it, or at least Rhiannon, definitely the character, has a serious personal bias towards ghosting. We do find out in the book that there was a family crisis that made him unable to like call her or text her back. But the one thing about me that I'm just going to go into in this wrap-up is that I believe in ghosting. If someone isn't adding something to your life, or if they're detracting more than they're adding to your life, I think you should cut them off. This isn't a therapy session for me or how my relationships work, but I just felt like this author was coming on too strong about a certain opinion of ghosting, as if everyone in the world thinks ghosting is terrible. If you're new to the dating app world, it may not feel natural to just not hear from someone, but honestly, you guys are just strangers on the internet talking to each other, and no one owes you fucking shit. Especially if you determined beforehand, like these 2 characters did, that it's just sex for you. I enjoyed the smutty parts, and I can link the vlog I have for that weekend. And then we're gonna move on to Beautiful Bastard by Christina Lauren, and yeah, Christina Lauren. What am I talking about? And I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars because reasons. It's like 90% smut, but I wanted to talk to you guys about this particular book because I have some questions for the authors. This was obviously a fan fiction that got turned into a very, very well received series, and obviously Christina Lauren is a pair of authors that have been doing books for years. But this series specifically is interesting to me because in this book, it seems like panty ripping is a kink, and I just don't know if the authors know that ripping like clothing takes a lot of strength, and if you're not having sex with like The Rock, it's impossible. Moving on. But also these 2 have sex in the changing room of a lingerie store, and I used to work for Victoria's Secret, and I want to say that you are the worst fucking human beings if you have sex in a public changing room. It's gross. You don't know what type of diseases are in those rooms. Please just don't have sex in them. It's disgusting, and just don't do that. And then I read Desperate Measures during the Smuttathon. I don't have the author written down. This was a kinky Jafar retelling. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I think that's pretty generous, but I'm not gonna go into it. And then I read Hot as Hades. This is a sexy Hades retelling, and honestly I thought this was interesting because I am a Greek mythology nerd, and I did not realize Persephone and Hades were related in the traditional Greek mythology, and this book actually works around that little like loophole. Apparently I was into some like retellings this month. Alright guys, so that was what I read in September. It was a little bit of a lower month for me rating wise, but I had some good favorites, so there was that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please definitely leave down below books you want me to read or review, or what you enjoyed during the month. I'm gonna go now guys, like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Bye!